Mr. President, it's an honor to serve in this body, and you've heard, the public has heard members of this body speak over the last 2 weeks on this similar subject in the wake of decisions by the Obama administration to lock up the coastal plain of ANWR to future development. And I guess I want to begin by saying that I'm known as being somewhat of a moderate. I'm a Republican, but I'm a person who's known as being thoughtful and not particularly partisan in the way that I view things. And so my points, I hope, will be taken with that thoughtful consideration that I have. I view the environment as something that is worthy of protection. I'm the mother of a young child that I hope will get to live here for many generations and raise his children here in a clean and pristine environment. But I'm someone who is also a mother of a child that I hope will have the opportunities that I did to have a job and to have a great education and to grow up in a state where there's a future ahead of us. And to that end, as the co-chair of the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission, I've been particularly disappointed with the recent decision, not just the decision to put this one particular area many Alaskans have described as a postage stamp on a football field to give people a perspective of the size of the coastal plain on ANWR. It was a deal that was made with President Carter, an environmentalist president who made a deal with our senior senator Ted Stevens many years ago to say, let's lock up a particularly large area and put it off limits, and then allow for America's energy needs to be developed in the future. And as the prior senator said, it was part of ANILCA. We would allow no more after that to then be put into wilderness. And now we're hearing more decisions about that. I want to add some other decisions that have been made recently in the Arctic. As we prepare here in April to take the chair of the Arctic Council. This is a global body. We're one of 8 Arctic nations. The United States is the chair only because of Alaska. Our government has just announced its priorities, and myself, along with the other co-chair from the House, have been working with the White House strategy team now closely weekly, in person in some cases, and by phone in other cases weekly, to talk with them about what Alaskans, real Alaskans, feel. We've invited them to Barrow, to Unalaska, to Fairbanks in person and in listening sessions. And I was hopeful that those listening sessions and those in-person meetings would really dictate the policies they would come out with. And in the wake of this ANWR decision, they've come forward with what they believe that these next 2 years should be spent looking at from the United States view. And a disappointing decision was made to present in order the 3 priorities for the 2 years. And I say it because of the order in which they've been placed, Mr. President. The first will be a look in 2 years now at climate change. And I don't say that because I don't think climate change isn't something that we should be looking at globally. Of course we should. I say it because I don't believe that the Arctic Council is the body. It's not a scientific body. It's not the body that should be looking at it. I don't believe it's the body that has the power to change climate change. And I worry because the viewpoint is that somehow locking up development of Alaska and any future development of the Chukchi and the Beaufort and ANWR will be the way to go ahead and address climate change. And that, again, ties the hands behind our back to adapt to climate change that's already happening. And then, of course, Grayson and Valentina and Carly's opportunities for the future. And so there again, we look at our future. The number 2 priority is what is called ocean zone mapping. And many Alaskans who might be watching don't know what that is yet. And that's a very expensive effort in a time where our resources are challenged to map the Arctic Ocean and to zone out areas for Americans for uses. And they will be prohibitive. There will be marine sanctuaries where people will not be able to develop and use. They will not be able to access subsistence rights. They will not be able to access fisheries. They will not be able to access transportation opportunities potentially in the future. And certainly they will not be potentially able to access the very vast resources in our hydrocarbons in the Chukchi and the Beaufort. The third and least important, quote, basket that the federal government has come forward is economic development for the people of the Arctic. And of course, that's the number one priority that you've seen the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission come forward with. That is our number one priority. And the country that just has held the chairmanship has been the country of Canada, our northern neighbor, our closest contiguous country, the one that shares the closest geographical features in common with us. And their entire theme has been Arctic development for the people of the Arctic. That's been their whole theme. In fact, their prime minister appointed a northern premier, Leona Aglukkaq, who was the governor, a premier of Nunavik. It would be the equivalent of President Obama appointing Governor Walker to chair the Arctic Council. And she has worked steadily over the last 2 years to make that a priority. So I can tell you that the 2 years ahead look pretty grim in terms of the policies coming from the federal government. And I just want to express disappointment here on the floor for that. And the disappointment, I guess I'd like to say, is one of lack of listening. It's something that we here in the Alaska State Senate pride ourselves on. In any issue that we take forward, including the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission, we started every meeting with a listening session. So when we were in Barrow, rather than going to tell the people of Barrow what we think they should hear, we spent a full day listening. And the Arctic elders there told us, in no uncertain terms, to a person, they would like to see ANWR preserved as a place for development even before the Chukchi and the Beaufort were looked at as a place for America and Alaska's energy potential. So that was something that's featured in our report, just as one example. And then here you have the federal government doing the exact opposite. Wholesalely taking that off of the table for America's future energy development and for Alaska's future energy development. So the federal government is in two cases that I'm highlighting today, in the ANWR decision and in its three policies moving forward for the chairmanship of the Arctic Council, clearly not listening to the state that makes America an Arctic nation in a way that is very disturbing to me. I just want to read a couple statistics that I think are really important for young people out there listening and Alaskans to remember. Just as recent as 2012, right now it's true that we have enough hydrocarbon potential here to supply America's energy needs. That's a recent phenomenon. But as recent as 2012, America was importing 40% of America's energy needs from countries like Venezuela, from the Middle East, from countries that mutilate women's genitals, I will say that, from countries that kidnap children and adults and hold them hostage, from countries that do not hold the same values that we do. And I think it's important to highlight that, because this state is a part of a country that is the best country in the world, and a country that holds values so deep. And it holds 27 billion barrels of oil and 130 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in America's Arctic, waiting to be developed. It holds 10 billion barrels of oil in the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve in the coastal plain. And these places should be reserved and held open for America's energy potential in case we need them. And we all look to renewable energy. We all hope that that's a part of our future, but they're still very expensive technologies. And while we depend on hydrocarbons, we should not be importing from those countries that treat women and children and human beings in such awful ways. And I'm going to close in honor of my good friend from Fairbanks, who gave such an incredible poem adaptation on the floor the other day of Dr. Seuss. It's a humble attempt, and it's nothing like what he did, but it's an adaptation of a part of the cremation of Sam McGee from Robert Service. And so if I could read it, Mr. President. There are things done to us that live under the midnight sun. Those things moil against oil. The D.C. halls have secrets in their walls. The states' rights they try to spoil. The Northern Lights have seen terrible sights, but the worst that we ever saw was Sally Jewell treating Alaskans cruel, getting Obama to lock up ANWR. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Senator McGuire.